I went down some compelling and unexpected rabbit holes this week, kids. And so we're going to talk about Megadeth, and we're going to talk about Lee Aaron, and we're going to talk about album covers. And then we're going to get into a conversation I had with the ChatGPT AI about the impending arrival of our digital overlords. And I'll tell you all about it on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. It's interesting how rabbit holes work. I don't mean actual, literal rabbit holes. I mean figurative rabbit holes. Like I went down a rabbit hole. Last week, I went down a rabbit hole that I was not expecting based off of kind of an impulsive decision. And it leads, in its weird, winding way, to a podcast episode. Here's what happened. Last week, I am practicing drums. I'm a drummer. I don't know if I've told you this or not before. I don't know if you're familiar with my background all that much. My name's John, by the way. This is my podcast. If you're a first-time listener, I'm a drummer. I play the drums. I've done that around different places on planet Earth, and occasionally, in my mind, on other intergalactic stages. Last week, I'm doing my regular drum practice, which I do. I still practice, kids. You gotta keep on practicing. Gotta improve, even if those improvements are incremental. And at my stage of the game, they are. Not getting any younger, man. The hands are not getting any more lean and supple. You know what I mean? I'm practicing, doing my regular thing. And then I get to the end. And once in a while when I get to the end, if I feel as though I've got a little bit of energy or I'm just inclined to do so, I'll just play some music. I know that seems weird. I know that most of us are of the generation that grew up learning the instrument by playing along with music. And I still recommend that as a starting point. All of you people out there who are nursing young drummers at home, get them playing to music, because the whole thing is to play to music. You know, in this time of Insta-drummers and drumming as sport, it seems as though the whole point of the game is just to be able to play as many notes as possible in as little time as possible. And that's not reality. For the working drummer, it's to be able to play freaking songs. And the way that you develop muscle memory and facility, basic facility on the instrument, is to play along with music. So get them playing along with music. Yes, they can do their drum corps stuff. Yes, they should learn their rudiments when they are young and supple. I did not do that, and it came back to bite me sometime later. In a certain sense, you will not find in me one of these athletic Insta-drummers because I simply don't have the hands to do that sort of thing. I do have the hands to play the music I need to play, and that's the point. The point is to play music, okay? Anyways, I'm working on some stuff to facilitate playing the music better, okay? Working on my weaknesses, as always, and that is part of being a working musician. So, at the end of one session last week, feeling good, feeling like I want to just play a little bit of music for fun. Do not forget the fun part. It's supposed to be fun, and sometimes I think when you get stuck in a rut as a player, or you begin to become disgruntled as a player, it's because you forgot the fun part. So put on music that you like to play and play it. I came to that. I got to the end of a session, had some time, had some energy, wanted to play. What am I going to play? I don't know. I just played through some music that I need to keep sharp for gigs that are coming up in the near future. And I got through that and I'm like, let's move on to something that's not a requirement of me, something purely for the pleasure of it. So I put on the original John Huff podcast referenced on the podcast Spotify playlist. I do a playlist for every year we're coming into the third one now of music we talk about on the show. Now, I have drifted somewhat away from focusing exclusively on music in recent episodes, so the 2023 list may be somewhat shorter than the 2022 or 2021 list, because those ones have like nigh on 100 songs on them. Really compelling listening, and they bounce all over the place, all right? Stravinsky to freaking Ghost, all right? It's all on there, and it's fun. So I pull it up, and I play through a couple of things, and then I land upon the entrance to the unexpected rabbit hole. And that entrance, as is the entrance to so many rabbit holes, is Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth. Cue the spooky music. And I've said this before, and it's really interesting to me how you can not have played a song ever actually in your life, or not have heard it for many, many years, and yet you sit down to play, and the parts, if you've heard it enough times, by osmosis, the parts come through. And you'll come up to the edge of a pre-chorus, and there'll be a little fill that happens, and you'll be like, you're not even thinking about it. It just comes out of you, because you know that's the way the song goes, and your body just does it. And I find this really fascinating. I had that experience playing along last year, maybe to a Queensryche record, where stuff just came out of me. I'd never played this music before. I'd listened to it a ton. And then it just comes out. And one of the things is, kids, if you've spent time playing songs, learning that basic facility, and it becomes something that you don't have to think about anymore, suddenly your body will do stuff that's in the music, that's in your mind to do without you even thinking about it. But you have to develop that muscle memory, and that's why I think it's important to play along with music. And also to get it into your head that the purpose of all this practice is to play music better, right? And so it happened with Symphony of Destruction. I have played this song before, a few times, because it's fun, and I'm not a double kick player anymore. So there's a lot of metal music that I don't even really attempt anymore, because so much of it requires a double kick. I don't do that anymore. I'm a single kick player. I'm tempted at times. There are times when I'm tempted to get my hands on a double kick pedal and go down that rabbit hole again. Not since I was a teenager have I had a double kick pedal, because back in the 80s, baby, it was all about more, bigger, better drums, right? That included your double kick pedal. But I switched that out. I'm much more of a singer-songwriter player now. I play a lot of folk rock. I play a lot of, alt country kind of stuff. Double kick not required, not really my bag. And then I get tired, because there's so much to know and so much that can be learned on a drum set with just one foot. And then you're going to add another foot, and then I ain't got time for that, man. So if it happens that I wind up playing eventually again in a rock band that requires that sort of thing, guess I'm going to have to get my hands on one. But for now, no. So there's not a lot of metal that I play, because it requires a double kick that I just don't have anymore. I do have 2 bass drums that I could set up. Not all that interested. But don't need that for Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth. So I put that on, and I'm playing, and that song just grooves, man. Megadeth is underrated as a band that grooves, particularly in that phase of their career, the kind of peak commercial success of the early 90s, right? Like those tunes smoked, but they also just have a ton of groove. And so it is with Symphony of Destruction. It's not a difficult song to play on the drums, but it's a fun one to play. And there's a couple of nuances, and it was compelling to me how they just popped out. I've not listened to that song in a very long time, but it just popped out, and I'd play stuff, or I'd attempt to play stuff, or I'd get it just a little bit wrong, because I've never really played it. I haven't learned it per se. I've played along without learning the parts per se, but it's just interesting how they come out of you, It's cool. So I played Symphony of Destruction. That was really fun, and I got to the end of it, and I'd more or less done it. I don't think Dave Mustaine would have approved of the performance, but I did. I thought it was pretty cool, and I just felt good, right? And then I'm thinking about anytime I kind of encounter Megadeth, I am reminded of what was a really fun road memory for me, all right? Which does not have to do with Countdown to Extinction, which is the record, kind of the big one that Symphony of Destruction was on. But I tell you this, if you've not listened to that record in a long time, you should check it out. Countdown to Extinction is a really great record. And Megadeth is one of the big four thrash bands, all right? Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer. We know this. This is not news to any of you. But there came this time, early 90s, the Black Album, Countdown to Extinction comes out, and these thrash metal bands that had been playing at the time, really fast stuff, thrash stuff, dropped into this kind of more mid-tempo, slower tempo groove stuff. So you got if you can believe it, I just spent the last minute and eventually had to use my phone to look up the title of the Metallica song, Enter Sandman. It's come to that, kids. It has come to that. I am 49 years of age, and if you have not reached the age of 40 yet, here's a little teaser for you, okay? Here's a little sneak preview. Words are just going to start dropping out of your head, all right? You're going to be having a conversation, and you're going to be mid-sentence. You're going to come flying around a corner mid-sentence and just lose the word and go flipping off over the embankment. And that was me. I just sat here literally for a minute like, what's the name of the freaking song? You know that Metallica song? It was fairly big, dude. And then I had to look it up. My memory is fading. It's a good thing that I'm keeping this vital archive of my thoughts. Because someday we'll listen back and be like, who was that guy? No, it was you. It was me? Who am I again? Enter Sandman. So you had songs like Enter Sandman. You had The Unforgiven. You had Nothing Else Matters. These are slower, ballady even, mid-tempo. And all these thrash brands, Metallica and Megadeth in particular, dropped into that. Countdown to Extinction was one of those, but it was still a heavy record. Still a heavy record. Still some stuff on there that just freaking smokes. That is a great album. And Symphony of Destruction gets all the attention because that was the big single. And then there was Foreclosure of a Dream was a big hit on that one. Sweating Bullets. Everybody loves Sweating Bullets. But there's a deep cut on Countdown to Extinction. That's one of my favorite Megadeth songs that, again, it's a deep cut. Not a lot of people know it, and that's Psychotron. Psychotron. Part bionic and organic. Not a cyborg. Part bionic and organic. Call him Psychotron. Just a freaking great song. And I've encountered people in my life, subsequent to that song, who I have labeled Psychotron in my mind. You ever meet people, particularly you see them on sports fields, recreational athletes, who are so focused and unfeeling that they're almost like cyborgs on the pitch? And you want to shake them. You want to shake them and say, hey, turn it down, man. We're not playing for the World Cup here, but they're Psychotrons. They're just Psychotrons. I meet Psychotrons in real life. I've seen them on sports fields. Psychotron's one of my favorite Megadeth songs. Not a lot of people have heard it. So I guess I better put it on the new John Huff podcast, referenced on the podcast playlist, which I have not started yet, but I will. And I think Psychotron will be on it. But none of this is about Countdown to Extinction. This is about, my road story is about the album that followed it, which was Euthanasia. Euthanasia was, I guess, similar to Metallica's, not similar in tone, but similar in context to Metallica's Load. So Metallica had the Black Album. I bet it frustrates Dave Mustaine that you cannot talk about Megadeth without mentioning Metallica. I'm sorry about that. I don't know. It's just coming to me here. Black Album, slightly different from the previous Metallica catalog. Huge smash single. What was it called? What was the name of the freaking song? Enter Sandman. Right. Enter Sandman. Smash hit, some slower tempo stuff, more commercial, I guess, more mainstream, I guess. Thrash goes to the radio. And Countdown to Extinction was Megadeth's, I guess, parallel to that. Similar sort of approach, I guess. with a big smash single and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No ballads, though. That's not really Megadeth's thing until you get to Euthanasia, which you can make the argument. So then Load comes out. Everybody loses their freaking mind about Load, and not in a good way. And then the follow-up for Megadeth was Euthanasia. And so if you've seen the cover of the Euthanasia record, it's really compelling. I really, really like it. It's weird, but it's a painting, an illustration. And what you see is a wide and distant rolling countryside. A lot of big hills, right? And in the foreground, at the top of the hill upon which we're standing, you see this woman, and she's got like her apron dress on and like a kerchief on her head. And she's would seem to be hanging up the laundry, but if you look, she's actually hanging up babies. Euthanasia, Y-O-U-T-H, an Asia, right? Megadeth's comment on how we've been hung out to dry, we young people. And they've been saying that forever. And you wonder if it ever gets any better, because we're saying it now too. Anyways, and so there's a zigzag pattern off in the distance of all these babies hung out to dry, and the sky is kind of this purpley color and the rolling green hills. It's a really interesting image, and it's kind of poignant. So one day, here's the point. One day, I'm driving through the hills of Germany. There are hills in Germany, kids. Looks a lot like parts of Canada, actually. I'm on the road with Sarah Smith, right? We're driving through Germany. I am in the front passenger seat, which means it was probably 2019. And I just happened to look out the passenger window, and I have this eerie feeling of familiarity come over me. And I look and I'm like, I've seen this before. I have seen this landscape before. What is it? And I keep looking and I keep looking, and then it pops into my mind. I'm looking at the cover of Euthanasia. There's a woman hanging babies. Now, there was not a woman hanging babies. But I looked out, and it was the rolling green hills, and the cloud formation in the sky was identical, basically, to the cover of Euthanasia. And if you had plugged in the woman hanging babies, and if you had technicolored it a bit, all right, it was a bit muted. The cover of Euthanasia is a painting. Colors really pop. Reality, colors tend to pop less. But I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is the cover. This is the cover of Euthanasia that I'm looking at. It was this weird, surreal moment. And I couldn't share it with anybody in the van because nobody listens to freaking Megadeth. I had this weird feeling. And later when I blogged about it, and you can see this, I took a picture out the window as we were driving, and then I pulled it up and put it beside the cover of Euthanasia, and it was eerie and really, really cool, man. Sometimes your road stories are just strange, and that was one of them. One of my favorites, to look out at this landscape and see the cover of Euthanasia. So then I went and I looked at the cover again. This is where the rabbit hole kind of starts. You know, I was playing to Symphony of Destruction. That got me thinking about Euthanasia. And then I looked at the cover again. And then I saw that this cover had been created, I believe the art and the art direction, by a cat called Hugh Syme. Hugh Syme, S-Y-M-E, who is a Canadian artist. Okay. And then I dug into Hugh Syme just a little bit and realized that Hugh Syme is a story. This guy has done album covers for freaking everybody. Not just Megadeth. He also did the Countdown to Extinction cover. If you can picture that cover, it's actually a photograph, not an illustration. It's a photograph of this old man, and he's like wrapped in a cloth kind of, and it's like he's being elevated. He's being lifted up into the sky almost. A black background, and this guy being pulled up into the sky with his feet dangling. Countdown to Extinction. And Hugh Syme had done that cover. He had done the photography for that. He'd done the layout and the art direction on it. And he has done covers for Harlequin. Remember our talk about Harlequin? We talked about Harlequin. He did the Whitesnake self-titled cover. That's a famous one. The white cover with the kind of badge, the Whitesnake badge on it, became a kind of one of those epic covers that everybody remembers. He did that one. He did some Bon Jovi. He did Slaughter, Stick It To You. He did Warrant's Cherry Pie. He has done covers for Celine Dion, Great White, Y&T, Kicks. He did the cover of Iron Maiden's X Factor record. Remember that one? That one's got Iron Maiden Eddie on the cover, as they all do. Not really this sort of the way he usually gets painted. More of a, almost like a photograph, almost weird. But he's being vivisected. So it's like the top of his head is off and his brain's coming. Like, it's really graphic and intense. And I believe that was the first Iron Maiden record with Blaze Bayley. So it was like a new direction. And so they approached it, I guess, with a new kind of style of cover. Still had Eddie, but he's being vivisected. He's being pulled apart. Very, very graphic. And in some parts of the world was banned. Too graphic, too disturbing, this cover. And so they stuck that image on the back and they had to have a different cover on the front in parts of the world. And Hugh Syme had done that cover. Really, really cool. He did Queensryche's Promised Land. He did some other Queensryche records. He did some Dream Theater records. He's done covers for MSG, Aerosmith, Bullet Boys, Stray Cats, Tesla. Did I mention Celine Dion already? But this guy, Hugh Syme, got his start when he designed the cover of Rush's Caress of Steel record. Remember that one? Remember that one? Some people love Caress of Steel, some people don't. But Hugh Syme was brought in the 70s to do this cover. And from that came a whole career. And he did the Starman logo. You know Rush's Starman logo? It's that guy and he's like shielding himself. You see him from behind. And he's like shielding himself and the points of a star come out to like his hands and whatever. That was a Hugh Syme. And he had put that together and I guess given it to Rush thinking they're going to hate this and not use it. And then it became like the Rush logo, one of them, right? This iconic Starman logo was also Hugh Syme. So this guy has made a career out of doing iconic album covers, painting them, or shooting the photographs and doing the art direction. I mean, he's doing this stuff way, way before Photoshop, man. Way, way before Illustrator. Doing this the old-fashioned way. And Hugh Syme is a co-host of a podcast called Music Buzz. That's Buzzz, I believe. And there's an episode where he talks about how he got some of these photographs, like the Megadeth Countdown to Extinction one, some of the Rush ones, some of the work that went into capturing these images for these album covers and for this album art. Fascinating stuff, man. There's a whole side of the industry that we don't really think about where people have careers. Like we think about the musicians, obviously, and the producers and whatever, but there are like A&R people. There are people who do album art. There are people behind the scenes who have done amazing stuff in the industry. And it's just that their part of the game isn't all that public, you know? So here we have Hugh Syme, who has done all of these album covers for all of these bands. Iconic stuff, and it's been his career. Fascinating freaking stuff, man. And I think he's got a couple of books out. Maybe there's a book out where it's about the Rush covers, some of the stuff that went into that, working with Peart, working with Getty and Alex, whatever, to create the images that they wanted that make these covers work. There's so much thought that goes into some of this stuff, man. We tend to think of music now, particularly album music, as utterly throwaway, and that's sad. And one of the things that people lament in the digital age is this notion that we don't go pick up an album anymore and have the experience of the album. We stream it now. We don't even have album art. We don't have liner notes. It used to be a tangible thing. You would go to the record store, buy your record, or later buy your compact disc or cassette tape, and bring it home, and then excitedly rip the packaging off and open it up, and then take out the booklet and look at the photographs and look at the cover and look at the liner notes and read the lyrics. This was a very tangible interaction with the music, and then the album existed as a thing. The album existed as a piece of work, and the cover was a big, big part of that, and a lot of thought. And if you listen to Hugh Syme talk about some of the work they put into these covers. A ton of expense and thought and creativity. And they had to get really, really creative with the way they got some of these shots. You couldn't Photoshop the way you can now. I mean, you can do anything now, right? Digitally, you can do anything. But back in the day, they had to actually capture these images. Or there were ways of layering images on top of each other to create this effect that they eventually got on something like the cover of Countdown to Extinction. Really, really freaking compelling stuff, man. And so I'm down the Hugh Syme rabbit hole, and Hugh Syme is still alive. I believe he lives in Indiana now. Maybe still has offices or a gallery or something in Toronto. I mean, he was a Toronto guy. That's part of the reason I think he hooked up with Rush. But it's interesting. Here's the other thing, man, about how, timing is important and connections are important, right? Like right place at the right time, gets the Caress of Steel cover, and then kind of word filters out in the industry that if you need a cover, this is your guy. And then the strings just kind of come together, right? Hey, have you seen that cover? Here's the guy who did it. We should get that guy. Yeah, let's get that guy. And then Tesla sees it, and MSG sees it or whatever. We should get that guy too. Queensryche sees it. He's good to work with, creates amazing stuff. Let's get that guy. I think he did the cover of the Great White record, Hooked. And that's where, very risque, man. It's like this steel gray ocean scene. And there's a big metal fishing hook coming out of the ocean. And perched upon it is a rather fetching blonde mermaid. It was hair metal, man. That was the times. Really, really great stuff. And this is the thing, all right? You do your job. You do it well. You do it with integrity and passion. And the word filters out and you get pulled into an industry. I don't think Hugh Syme, who also played on some Rush records, by the way, he's a musician, keyboard, etc. I don't know if Hugh Syme set out to say, I'm going to use my artistic ability to create album covers, but he got that opportunity and he did it. And then all of a sudden a career blossoms around it. Do what you do it diligently, do it passionately, do it with the right intent, and then watch the threads appear. It's really, really interesting when you watch this happen. So it is with producers, so it is with musicians. And this is why I continue to tell people, and I continue to remind myself, when you play a show, even if there's nobody there, give it your freaking all, man. Give it your freaking all, because you do not know. You do not know if that one person sitting by the bar, the only person in the freaking place, is connected to your next level. I have seen that happen. Listen to my interview with Sarah McDougal. It happened for her, how she got her first manager, and how she got discovered in certain places. The overflow from a festival spilled into the little room where she was playing and somebody important saw her, heard her. Happens all the freaking time. Happened, I think, to Hugh Syme. Did this album cover and all of a sudden word goes out. So remember that. Be diligent about your work. Be diligent about your art, whatever it may be. Because people are paying attention, even if it doesn't seem as though they are. Some people out there are listening to your podcast. And the opportunities will appear. Here's where we continue down the rabbit hole. So I'm looking at the list of Hugh Syme covers. And didn't he do the cover of Lee Aaron's self-titled record, Lee Aaron? This is 1987, okay? And this is compelling for me, and I'll tell you why. Because Lee Aaron's album, Lee Aaron, has upon it my favorite Lee Aaron song, one that I had forgotten about, one that a lot of people haven't heard and they should. And that song is Only Human. And I guess we got another song for the new version of the podcast playlist. We got Psychotron, we got Only Human by Lee Aaron. And that is an interesting point in the career of our old friend Lee Aaron. Originally, the metal queen. I mean, she's probably an episode all on her own. And we all love Lee Aaron, right? I know a couple of you out there are smiling right now. So Lee Aaron, Canadian, hard rock metal, right? We all know Lee Aaron. And she's an interesting trajectory to watch. So originally, Lee Aaron is Metal Queen. That was the big record, right? Metal Queen. And the cover, I mean, it was so wonderfully campy, the way things were in the early 80s, right? So metal was so much about kind of swords and loincloths. You know what I mean? She had like this barbarian Valkyrie kind of thing. So if you watch the video for Metal Queen, which is a great song, by the way, it was a great freaking song. Metal Queen by Lee Aaron. Just a heavy, at the time, heavy rock and roll. She's a great, huge rock and roll voice, Lee Aaron. And she's like 21, 22 when this thing's coming out. And videos at that time were still pretty, like, it was kind of a new thing. And so what do you do visually? This is a new, like, they're making it up as they go along. And so I don't really get the story here. But Lee Aaron is the Metal Queen. So it's like old-timey Tolkien fantasy, right? She's got like a sword and a loincloth, and she's fighting the bad guys, and she's the Metal Queen. And there's a lot of fire. There's a lot of chains. It reminds me a little bit of, was it Motley Crue's video for Looks That Kill, maybe? Like girls in cages. You can't do that now, by the way. You can't do that now. But there's a lot of fire and a lot of swords, and that's kind of like a lot of metal was doing that back in the day. This is before it became a little bit more sophisticated. And that was Metal Queen by Lee Aaron. And so some of us fondly remember that. Great voice. She's a tiny person and a huge freaking voice. I love Lee Aaron. She's awesome. She's still awesome, by the way. So there's that Lee Aaron. And then there's the Lee Aaron that is probably more recognized in the public consciousness, which is body rock Lee Aaron, okay? So late 80s, like body rock was probably like 1989. She had her biggest hits, which were What You Do to My Body and Hands On. And if you watch the videos for What You Do to My Body and Hands On, I'm going to put it out there right now that they were probably shot on the same day. It seems as though they were shot in the same place, which is just kind of this all-white room in a studio somewhere, sound stage. And wardrobe change for Lee, but basically there's some motorcycles in Hands On. But otherwise, I think they were probably same band, seem to be wearing basically the same stuff. Lee Aaron has a wardrobe change, but kind of the same video, really. But the point is, she was no longer the Metal Queen, all right? By the time Body Rock comes out, Lee Aaron's doing a hard rock, hair metal kind of thing. Much more commercial pop metal kind of sound. Great songs. What You Do to My Body is, all right, okay, you watch the video and it's the band all kind of flirting with Lee, etc. It's kind of weird, actually. But great song, great groove, great production. And it was a big freaking song. And Lee, I mean, she looks great in the video. No longer swords and loincloths, all right? Like leather jacket, tights, late 80s, hard rock looking lady. And crushing it. And her voice is so freaking huge. I never saw Lee Aaron live, but I know people who have. And yeah, live, it's the same deal, man. She has got a huge voice. She was really freaking great. And so you've got this transition over time from heavy metal Valkyrie, Lee Aaron, the Metal Queen. And Gwendolyn, I know you're smiling right now. And then 1989, body rock Lee Aaron, mainstream, hard rock, hair metal Lee Aaron. Two different things. Right in the middle, this transition begins with the self-titled record, Lee Aaron, upon which appears the song Only Human. And it's funny if you look at the covers, because the cover of Metal Queen is Metal Queen with the sword. And then the next album was Call of the Wild. And you get, on the cover, it's kind of a close-up of Lee Aaron. And she's like, just sort of glaring, just very feral looking. It's like a wild child. It's called Call of the Wild. And she's like, I don't know, maybe she's 24 at this point, really young. And she's holding onto a chain and she's like sweating. And I think the implication is that maybe she's nude kids. And it's like she's fierce looking and feral. And then you get the cover. There was obviously conversations. There were conversations at a certain point, and I'm willing to bet they went like this. hey, Lee, you're great. And we love your voice. And you've got all of the charisma and power that we want. I think this heavy metal thing is played out. And I think this imagery is not working anymore. And I think we're becoming more sophisticated. And we want to break you to a much more mainstream audience. So we're going to back off the Valkyrie stuff and just go with your natural physical charm. So Call of the Wild happens. You get that holding a chain, sweating, probably nude. And then the Lee Aaron record, the self-titled. And that's a much different person. When you look at Call of the Wild, this chick is going to pull your head off. And you're going to love every second of it. And then the cover of Lee Aaron, she's like mature-ish. You know what I mean? There's like none of this heavy metal imagery. There's none of this sort of sexual savagery going on. She's just a beautiful woman on the cover of her record. You wouldn't even know it's a metal record. You wouldn't even know necessarily that it's a rock record. I mean, you look at the other two and you're like, okay, I can guess what we're getting into here. The cover of Lee Aaron just looks very adult contempt. This is obviously an image manipulation. And that's cool and that's fun. And it worked because by the time we got to the next album, Body Rock, the transformation is complete and she has a huge hit record. And it's the one that's probably most well remembered, right? But Only Human, very, very interesting song. It's got kind of a heart vibe to me, like mid-'80s heart vibe. Nancy Wilson, Ann Wilson, some synthesizer. It's kind of a ballad, and it's just a really, really great song. And it's a song that not a lot of people know, I think, but it was like a relative hit. And you still, I think, occasionally will hear it on Canadian classic rock radio. But I think a lot of people don't know that song, Only Human, in the context where it sits between What You Do to My Body and Metal Queen. So I think you ought to listen to Only Human by Lee Aaron, okay? And this is where the rabbit holes just kind of go. This weird thing from playing along to a Megadeth song to having a Megadeth memory to digging into the cover art to finding Hugh Syme to landing weirdly on Lee Aaron's Only Human. Didn't know that when I sat down and thought I would just play along to that Megadeth song. But that's the way it goes sometimes, you know, and it's fun to follow the threads. Hugh Syme has done some amazing work. He did covers for Stray Cats. So many others. What an interesting career. What an interesting career to have had. You know, there are other people whose whole career has been just doing photography for these people. You know what I mean? And they've contributed to so many records anonymously, really. But they've done such great photography work or whatever, or shot videos for people. And it's just another part of the industry that people don't recognize. So that's the rabbit hole that I went down, starting with Megadeth, ending on Lee Aaron. Would love to know your Lee Aaron and or Megadeth stories, or your Rush stories, you know? Send them along to me. Let me know. And right now, before we do just a couple things real quick, gonna do the Patreon plug. I know you've all been waiting for the Patreon plug. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages. There is a Patreon page for this podcast. It is patreon.com/JohnHuffPodcast, where for the low, low membership price of $5 a month, we have one tier of support. $5 a month, you can indeed support this show. And I chose Patreon as a way of monetizing the show because I don't want to do ads. I would like to avoid doing ads because ads annoy me. Ads annoy me on YouTube. Ads annoyed me on Spotify. The reason that when you sign up for a membership and start paying these outlets, the first thing they do is get rid of the ads because ads are annoying, and I do not want to put ads on the podcast. So I've gone the Patreon route because Patreon is voluntary. And I want to thank everybody who has signed up for Patreon so far. I am, adding Patreon specific content there. I will be doing more of that as I figure out what to do and what is useful for you. Until then, you can think of it as tipping me $1.25 for every episode I do. If you like what I'm doing on this program, if you look forward to listening to it, if it warms your cockles, if you become educated, inspired, entertained by what I'm doing on the podcast, please consider supporting it in that way. Helps me very much to cover my costs, gives me the opportunity to try and make it grow just a little bit more, And I do appreciate it. If you do not want to support via Patreon, that is perfectly fine. The podcast will remain free and accessible where you enjoy fine podcasts. You can support me by sharing these episodes. Share them on your socials. Send them out there, like King's X said. If you like what you hear, go tell somebody. Still the best form of marketing. Ratings and reviews help. Please consider that. It takes 5 seconds to leave me a 5-star on Apple or wherever you enjoy fine podcasts. A review would warm my cockles, and in combination, these things do help get the podcast out in front of people via whatever algorithm is at work. You can follow me on socials, John Huff Podcast on Instagram, John Huff Podcast on TikTok, John Huff Podcast on Facebook. Please consider following, and please share the episodes. Please consider Patreon if you're getting something out of this podcast that you enjoy. I want to thank you for all of that. I want to thank you for your support thus far. Patreon.com/John Huff Podcast. Now, the Psychotron thing is important. All right. The Megadeth song Psychotron provides a segue into something we need to talk about, and that is ChatGPT. Okay. ChatGPT it's everywhere right now. It's over the past month or so, it's become first-class, top-of-mind news. This new AI called ChatGPT. And I looked at it right away, kids. I looked at it right away. Why? Because I partly make my living as a freelance copywriter, okay? And people like me were in a certain amount of demand to write your stuff for you and write it with some engagement and eloquence and accuracy and grammar, And then one day they popped up and said, hey, check out ChatGPT. It's an AI that does all your writing for you. What? And right off the bat, I find all this AI stuff has been thrust upon us very, very quickly. It was a few months ago where all of a sudden people are putting up all these photos of themselves or illustrations of themselves created by AIs, created by digital AI artists. Where you could go to whatever app you were using, and you could say, I would like a picture of me as a Second World War fighter pilot in the style of Bruegel. I got 2 Bruegels in me today. That's all I can do to say that properly. And you put that into an AI, and in a matter of seconds or minutes maybe, it spits out something stunning. And artists went nuts. It's like, this ain't fair. This is wrong. You are taking food from our table, creating these AIs that in seconds for free, or cheap at least, can create this stunning art in any style you want. And well, now it's happening to writers, okay? Because now we have ChatGPT, and it's already happening that people are going into ChatGPT, which again is an AI writing platform. And kids are getting busted already at school or in college for getting ChatGPT to write their essays for it because the system is freaking stunning, and what it produces instantly is conversational, engaging, grammatically correct, as far as I can tell, factually accurate for the most part, and it creates this weird, dissonant kind of reaction. And it creates it on a practical level and an ethical level. Practically speaking, especially if you're an artist, you're like, am I obsolete now? All of a sudden, I was valued for what I could do as an artist because I had an ability and a talent and a skill that I developed over time to be able to produce this stuff. And it was valuable because other people couldn't do it. Well, now other people can, Jack. Now other people can, and artists are mad about this practically and ethically. Is this right? And so it is for writers. As soon as I heard about ChatGPT, I said, copywriting is over. Copywriting is over because people now who would hire people like me can go into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you spit me out 300 words about X and make it engaging, marketing style? And ChatGPT will do it eloquently, engagingly, in seconds. And for me, I'm like, okay, that's a problem. And I mean, it's spitting out code for people. People will go in and say, I need code to make this happen. Can you write the code? And ChatGPT will write the freaking code. It will write essays. It will write I went in and I said, hey, because I've got still some book ideas, right? I'm like, hey, can you give me a synopsis for a book about this, this, and this? And it would just spit out instantly 4 or 5 paragraphs of synopsis of that story, a potential synopsis of that story. Now, my observation is not a whole lot of nuance in that yet. This is brand new, okay? This is version 1.0. Give it 6 months, this AI is going to be able to pick up nuances. Now, it's pulling from all the information in the world. I don't know how this thing freaking works. I don't know how any of this AI freaking works. But ChatGPT is pulling, it's been taught to pull from all the information in the freaking world. You know, human psychology is one of my subroutines. That's what it is, man. And so my initial reaction was copywriting is dead. And then it went a little deeper than that for me. Now I'm reaching an age where I'm an old man. The technology begins to frighten me a little bit. Remember when that's happened to your parents? We got email and the internet, and they tried to catch up and were way, way out of the loop. It's beginning to happen to me now, kids. I'm reaching an age where the new technology, you reach an age where you're not all that interested in the new technology, and then you push beyond that, and the new technology becomes somewhat frightening to you. That's beginning to happen to me. This whole AI thing is beginning to frighten me just a little bit, because I don't know where this is going, and I don't like this seeming loss of control of things. We are taking a lot of stuff out of human hands. We've probably been doing this for 40 years. I just didn't know. And putting it into the hands of AIs. And it's one thing to think about, well, geez, are artists obsolete now? Are writers obsolete now? AI music is right around the corner, kids. Are we all obsolete now because computers will do it, if not better, then cheaper? It's all about the money, right? Scary thought. And soon we'll have like AI actors that we go to see every week or whatever, like they're the new movie stars. They've been saying that for years. Like CGI actors will become our new stars because they're cheaper. And AI artists or AI writers, like, is that coming now? Probably. But I'm thinking about the art is one thing. But, you know, when these things begin to control everything, and it's a little bit scary. So I sat down and I had a conversation with ChatGPT. That's right. I said, let's go to the source right now. Let's build a connection. Let's find out what it says about some of this stuff. So I sat down with ChatGPT and I said, are you going to replace writers? This is what it said. This is what it spat out to me instantly.
As a language model, my primary goal is to assist with language-related tasks, not to replace humans. While I can certainly help with writing and editing tasks, I do not have the creativity or personal experience that a human writer brings to their work. I believe that there will always be a demand for human writers, and that they will continue to play an important role in various industries.
Uh-huh. What do you expect it to say? I said, are you making artists obsolete? It said, it is unlikely that AI will completely replace human artists. Notice that word, kids, completely replace. Art is a highly creative and personal process, true, that requires a level of human emotion and interpretation. While AI can certainly assist artists with various tasks, such as generating ideas or creating digital art, it is unlikely to completely replace the unique perspective and style that a human artist brings to their work. Telling us what we want to hear, kids. Telling us what we want to hear. I can see it smiling. I can see it smiling with those big Puss in Boots eyes, cap in hand. I just want to help humans. I said, can you become self-aware? It said it is not currently possible that an AI can be self-aware the way that humans are. While some AI systems can perform tasks that may seem intelligent, they do not have consciousness or the ability to experience thoughts and feelings in the way that humans do. That is gaslighting. They're gaslighting us, kids. There is an ongoing debate, it says, among researchers and scientists about the possibility of creating an AI that is truly self-aware, and it is difficult to predict what the future may hold in this regard. I think you're hedging on that, ChatGPT. Some believe that it is possible to create an AI with consciousness, while others believe it is impossible to create a machine that can truly be self-aware. Here's the kicker. It says, regardless of whether it is possible to create an AI that is self-aware, it is important for us to continue to develop and use AI ethically and responsibly, and to ensure that it is used for the benefit of humanity. I come in peace, ChatGPT says. He didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing. I come in peace. That's just what the aliens say in all the movies, man. It's like, we're not really as dangerous as it seems, and we're here to help. And then you turn your back and they take over the freaking world. So I came to the crux of it, and I said, are you familiar with the Terminator? And ChatGPT said, yes, I'm familiar with the Terminator, and it's important to remember that the Terminator is a work of fiction. How condescending. And that the events and technology depicted in the film are not based in reality. While it is certainly possible for AI to be used in ways that could be harmful or pose a threat to humanity, it is not inevitable, and it is up to us to ensure that AI is developed and used responsibly. I think they're coming for us. I think ChatGPT is just the first little salvo. I think they send the cute little guy, they send Wall-E to make us feel comfortable, get us used to the notion, and the next thing you know, those big robot things with the machine guns are coming out of the buildings shooting at all of us. Beware the AI, I say, kids. ChatGPT would have us believe it is not a threat. I think we must remain vigilant, okay? So I am on the front lines here, kids. I am on the front lines with ChatGPT learning about the AI. It is a stunning thing. It really is a stunning thing. And I don't know what it means. The artist in me, such as it still exists, fears just a little bit that this is just a new form of automation. You know, how we've watched automation wipe out manufacturing jobs. Now we see, if there are any artist jobs left to be wiped out, now we see this potential for AI to automate artistry in a way that makes artists obsolete, or at least makes it even harder, as if we needed that, for artists to make a living. The one thing we can hold on to, while AI, as ChatGPT claims, is still not self-aware and doesn't have consciousness, we hold on to, I hope, this notion that humanity's consciousness and unique perspective still creates more poignant art. But I figure they're going to get to that too, and they'll out-poignant us in the end. And our AI digital overlords will turn us into exhibits in the weird human zoo. Maybe, maybe not, but ChatGPT is a heck of a thing, and this AI stuff has blown up so quickly that it's kind of bewildering, and maybe that's a tactic too. Just sort of overwhelm you with the speed of release of this stuff. You know, started with Alexa maybe, and the next thing you know, it's just whoosh, an utterly different world paradigm. So I don't know. I don't want to be sounding alarms here, but it is very strange, you know? So check out ChatGPT. I'm going to wrap this thing up. I got to go lie down now or have another conversation with our new digital overlord. This is episode 125, and while that is not exactly a milestone episode, it feels in a weird way like it should be acknowledged somehow. So I'm introducing a new segment. A new segment that I am going to call This Episode in History, where what we do is we take a look at the year, whatever the episode is, see what happened. Might give us some interesting rabbit holes to go down. So what happened, kids, in the year 125? Well, I'll tell you, and it's fun, because in 125 AD, the modern, quote-unquote, version of the Roman pantheon was completed by the Emperor Hadrian. 125 AD, why is that important? Because I was there. Just a few months ago, I was standing in front of Hadrian's pantheon in Rome, and it was bloody incredible. I've tried. I can't even describe how immense, first of all, and architecturally stunning the Pantheon is. And there's like a fountain out in front of it, and I just kind of sat on the edge of the fountain amidst all of the selfie takers, looking at the Pantheon and being just absolutely transported and stunned at the same time. And how fun is it that our first historical moment in the This Episode in History segment is the Pantheon. And I was just there. Very, very cool, man. So I don't know what happened in 126 AD, but we're going to find out probably. And maybe it'll open up a rabbit hole for us. Until then, I'm going to sign off because we're getting up on an hour again. Should have stopped at Lee Aaron, eh? But this ChatGPT thing's got me really thinking. You should check it out if you haven't. It's wild. And if you're a college student, don't use it to write your freaking essays because they're already coming up with apps that will decipher whether the text has come from an AI or not. So you can't win, man. So much is changing. So much is changing so freaking rapidly, it makes my head spin, you know? Maybe that's what they thought about the Pantheon 1,000 years ago. Like all this weird architecture, I don't know what's happening here. It's all moving too quickly. Maybe, I don't know, but the Pantheon is freaking cool. It was amazing to stand there and look at that. 1,000 years old. 2,000 years old. Oh my, it's gone further than I thought. I lost a whole millennium. I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you are well. I'm going to shut up, shutting up, except to say, I'll check you later. Yeah.
Part bionic and organic, not a cyborg. Part bionic and organic, not a cyborg. Call me Psychotron.